Hi, this is Rick Ray. A lot of you know me from my travel films and adventures around the world. You also may know me from my experiences with the Dalai Lama. I don't know a lot about Macedonia. I'd never been here. I was at the tail end of a long trip through the Balkans, many enjoyable experiences as a tourist. But I had seen Macedonia pictures, and it looked like a beautiful place with a big lake that you could visit, mountainous scenery, friendly people, and a capital with a lot of statues. So I just thought it would be an interesting place to drive through on my way to take my car back to Munich at the very end of my trip. Little did I know that I was going to experience one of the most hellish travel experiences in my entire life. First, let me begin by saying that I have nothing to hide as a tourist. I'm not smuggling anything. I'm just an American tourist photographer that loves to go around the world and see the beauty of the different countries that I visit. Most of you who know me know that I travel with a couple of small movie cameras, a couple of tripods, and at least one drone. On this trip, I had a Phantom 3 drone and a small Parrot drone for practice and as a backup. Before I go to a country, I always research the laws about flying drones. Drone flying is perfectly legal in Macedonia, as long as some common European laws are followed. I didn't know this at the time, but far from being illegal, drones are in very high demand within the country, fetching up to 8,000 euros on the black market. Drones are also not on the list of items you must declare when entering Macedonia, a list which includes tobacco and alcohol products, currency, animals, medicines, weapons, counterfeit goods, endangered species, and cultural items. In fact, as I approached the border, I considered my drones to be personal items for personal use, just like my camera gear, my tripod, and I didn't believe they would require any kind of declaration. But as I was to learn, on some of the lonelier roads around Macedonia, corrupt customs officials are conducting aggressive raids on vehicles to pick up drones and other luxury items for resale. Tourist cars and cars with license plates from EU countries seem to be especially targeted. The problem is very pronounced around the Greece-Macedonia border, and especially at a remote and lonely checkpoint near the town of Bitola. Okay, so here's what happened. So I drove here from Greece. There's never been a problem going through any border. But here in Macedonia, they stop you at the border. All tourists, all cars that look like they have any money, like these cars ahead of us, they will stop you. They ask you a couple of questions. The main question they ask is, are you a tourist? And if you say yes, then they say, do you have tourist bags? And I said yes. And as soon as I said that, they burst open the car. They started to search every bag, and they found my camera gear. They found my drone. They confiscated the drone. They took me into a room where they aggressively and quite viciously questioned me and held me for 5 hours. It's shocking. The following officers are actively involved in this scheme of targeting and harassing tourists and confiscating drones and other luxury goods. Spiro Malevsky, who seems to be the ringleader of the operation. Lyubi Nikleski, who seems to be Spiro's right-hand man. Darko Bogdanovsky, a strongman who acts to intimidate tourists. And Evtimko Bazanovsky, a strongman bully who barely speaks English and acts as the unsupervised initial point of contact out on the road for motorists. So, what happened after that? They took everything in my car into a customs area. I was very brutally questioned. They told me, you didn't know that this camera, you didn't know that this drone, you didn't know that these things, you have to declare them? And I said, you didn't ask me to declare anything. I would have declared them. I even had a bottle of wine that I had from a Airbnb that I had been staying at. They said, no, you must declare them. So I said, okay, I'm declaring them. And they said, that's too late. You are now our prisoner. You are now staying here, and we will deal with you, and you are under our control. I've never had an experience like this traveling just as a tourist through any country. So I was like, my throat got dry, I was kind of shaky, and I thought, what's going to happen next? Again, I want to emphasize that you will not be asked what you have to declare. You will be asked other questions. Your car will be searched, and items will be taken, whatever these guards think that they can resell later. But that's not the end of the story. You will be held, as I was, for hours and hours and hours at this border. There were no drinks, there was no food, there was no place to go. The customs agents are very busy raiding other vehicles. And I know this sounds strange, but you have to watch it in action, as I was able to do for hours and hours on end. When you see it actually happening in front of your eyes, you realize that they're just following a script. This is the first step in some kind of bureaucratic process that ends up with the confiscation and resale of whatever goods these agents want to take from you. So as I watched, other cars pulled in, and again, the very same procedure. A couple of questions asked, the car opened, searched, they find something that they like, and then the man yells to the customs group, they come out, there's a big scene, the entire car is stripped of everything that is in it, put out on tables, and the very same argument is made. You didn't declare. You didn't declare. Well, you're not asked to. You don't understand what you might need to declare. You don't understand the process, but that's part of the process, is you not understanding it and they exploiting it to begin to scare you and intimidate you. Well, I was intimidated. I was fairly scared. I mean, what concerned me the most was seeing this happen over and over, and more prisoners being taken into the rooms, questioned, paperwork being confiscated and held, passports being held. And so I said, listen, just let me go back to Greece. I have no desire to come to this country. It's obviously not a place that tourists should come to. And they said, no, it is too late. You are now with us. You are staying here. I said, look, keep the drone. Do whatever you want. Just take it. I'll get another one. Just let me go. No, you are staying here with us. And tomorrow you'll be transported to Skopje, the capital, for trial. What? I'll be transported to the capital for trial? Well, at this point, I started to say, look, what's going on? You need to tell me what's happening here. But the more you'd ask, the more they would ignore you. And finally, one of the biggest, burliest, and meanest of the guards, the one who was really like, you don't know anything, it's your job to know about our country and our laws. He was really in my face a lot. He came by and he said very quietly to me as he passed, we like to let Americans wait. Okay, I don't know. I guess they don't like Americans, so maybe I'm a symbol of something to them. One thing that was very funny is several cars came through who had been through obviously several times before, and they brought lawyers to be able to get through. So at one point, a group of people came and they had a lawyer with them who was able to talk to the guards and actually shared drinks with the guards. The drinking was done on a bit under the table. The vodka was poured into the cups below the table, but you're left free to watch all this, which is part of their problem. And this lawyer got more and more drunk, and the funny thing was the lawyer was totally useless. They still confiscated everything that was in that car and held that guy, and he later became my fellow prisoner for a couple of days. One of the border guards came to me and he claimed I was undervaluing my drone. I didn't have internet connection, so I couldn't prove to him that on the B&H website my drone used, Phantom 3, was worth $600 used, which is what I had declared its value as. He said, no. This drone is worth $2,000. We get $2,000 for these drones. Here. And the way he said it made me think that he really knew how much money he could make selling this drone. A few moments later, they brought out other drones to show me. You like this model? You see this one? You see that one? Look, we have a lot of drones. And they were showing them to me like, you know, drone enthusiasts. What finally got things rolling, and they told me they would not give me my car papers back or my passport at all. So I couldn't leave this border post, and I thought it was starting to get dark, and I thought, what, am I going to have to stay here? And they were going to make other people sleep there. No food, nothing. These filthy restrooms, this stinking, horrible place in the middle of nowhere. Before we left, one of the customs agents, a young woman, came forward and asked if we could go outside for a smoke. And what that means is, can I talk to you privately? She took me outside and she said, listen, this is very unfair what's happening to you, but this is what they do. These men are bullies. These men are particularly an angry crowd. We have some nice agents, but they're not working here today. These men like to intimidate, and some of us don't believe in what they're doing. I said, why don't you help? Why don't you? She says, it's the bureaucracy here. She said, and also as a woman, I just, I'm a little afraid to confront the men when they get this aggressive. She said, but I want to apologize to you as a Macedonian for this behavior. It's wrong. And she openly admitted that it was corrupt. I said, look, I'm just a tourist. I was just coming in here to see the scenery. I highly regret coming. And she said, you'll never see your possessions again. She said, and tomorrow they will take you to Skopje. They'll put you on trial, and they will, after there's a hearing, they will extract money from you. They'll take more money as a penalty for your crime. What's my crime? Being an American and entering Macedonia as a tourist. Okay. She said, yes, unfortunately, she said, this is how it is. I can't do anything, and I apologize. And she left for the day. This gave me a little bit of courage. And so I went in, because nothing was happening. So I went in to the station, and I started to take their badge numbers and tell them that I was going to report every one of them for corruption. It was amazing that as soon as I did that, my paperwork appeared. After 4 hours of they doing nothing except looking on their cell phones, talking to their girlfriends on Skype, and drinking with the lawyer, suddenly my paperwork was ready. But I couldn't read it, I couldn't understand it, and it was apparently some kind of guilty plea. So I hand wrote that I do not understand what I am signing, and I did nothing wrong, and I was not asked to declare anything in English, and then I signed it. At that point, there was this guy, this big burly guy that had really been intimidating a lot of the drivers, and he was really, really kind of a scary dude, and he would loom over you and just like... And so I just handed him the paperwork, and I looked him in the eye, and I just kept looking at him as he read the paperwork. And I just kept looking at him to see if he would understand that I was not signing away my life. And he said, "Stop looking at me! Stop looking at me!" And I just kept looking at him. And then, so what he did after that is he just went, boom, like he was just like ready to hit me. Well, there were other witnesses there, and I kind of wanted him to hit me. I didn't care if he hit me anymore. But he was poised to hit me, and then a couple of his colleagues stopped him. I was allowed to leave, but told I needed to return for my trial in the morning. So I went into a nearby town, spent the night, drove back out, and there were all my friends, some of whom had slept there, some of whom who had found somewhere else to sleep. They were all back for their trial, and we were to be transported to Skopje. And this is the capital city, which is like three hours distance away. It was hilarious, kind of, and yet scary at the same time. we had to follow this vehicle for 3 hours who was going to lead us to the place where we would have our trial. And this was a little crappy little car that had customs kind of written, but it was in tape. It was like done in masking tape on the side, and parts of it were peeling off, and it could be, I thought it was not going to make it. And I guess the other guys, they were in a Mercedes and a BMW, and they were really tired of following this guy, and they knew the address, so they took off. But we were afraid because he had our passports, and we were following him on a bad road through fog, and we didn't want to lose him because we didn't. I say there were. I was bringing several people myself in my car because we didn't know exactly where we were going. Well, his car broke down on the road. About an hour, broke down. As absurd as this sounds, the customs car delivering us to our trial has broken down on the highway, and it appears that they're now going to need to take a ride with us. They're going to ask us to drive them there so that we can be convicted and pay a huge fine. So, interesting development. So I went to him and I said, hey, I'd be glad to give you a ride so you can prosecute me. If you give me back my drone, I'll pay the duty and I'll bring you back here to your car later. Because that sounded like a Macedonian deal. And he laughed and he said, yes, my son is with me, let's go. He got in my car, and I found myself in the position of driving my prosecution to my own trial. It was pretty absurd. He was a very nice man, and he hadn't been working there the day before. He said, oh, you're a nice guy, you look like a tourist. He said, we have to look more carefully at people that we do this. We shouldn't do this to nice people like you. Well, yeah, I was giving him a ride. He said, he'd been to the United States. He said, yeah, we know this is not how they do things in America, and you're nice, and I'm going to put in a good word for you. I thought this was a break. I was trying to make a lot of nice conversation with him because it seemed like he could help us, and this was a good break. So we talked a lot, and he said that Macedonia is a major drug smuggling route through Eastern Europe from the southern regions, the Middle East, and so on. So understandably, they want to have good security when they check you at the border and look for things like drugs and illegal goods and things like that. But he openly admitted that they also take a lot of items from people that they later sell. Now, they don't sell them in the capital. They don't have a real process for doing this. They take the items, they take them out to the countryside. Some of the agents have friends, they have a kind of a network, and when a new item like a drone or some exciting item comes available, they email them and they get this stuff for cheap. So he kind of indicated to us that there was a kind of a black market. But the officials in the government here also need to get their part of the money, which is why I was being transported to Skopje to pay a fine. So they would make their portion and they wouldn't participate in the appearance of trading in these goods. So now I understand the system. I said, does anybody ever get their things back? And he said, no. He said, but you could try if the U.S. Embassy were to come and stand over them here at your hearing, you might get your things back. So I'd already written off the drone. I can get another one. I just wanted to leave the country. He said, you will pay a fine. I said, can you help with that at all? And he said, well, I'll put in a good word for you because you're driving me to your trial. So we got there. My customs agent friend went into the back and talked and talked and talked. He came out and he said, you're very lucky. He said, you're very lucky. So I thought, okay, I don't know what that means, but it sounds good. And I thought, this is all great. This man is really nice. He's been very honest with me. He's explained the corruption in the system and how it works. I'd love to help his kids. I mean, no matter what happens, he's a nice man. He gave me his email, and we said goodbye. I was the first one taken in for testimony about my case. Other people had to wait. So that probably was part of the privilege that I got from meeting him. I was introduced to a translator who spoke very good English. She would act as my translator. And I was basically put in front of a stenographer or a man who would type up my statement. But first my statement was read to me. Their statement by the customs agent was read to me. And the statement was unbelievable. It stated that I drove up to the customs point, was asked if I had anything to declare, and then began to act suspicious. And because of my suspicious behavior, they decided to search my car. Unbelievable statement, because nothing like that even was close to happening. I mean, they just asked if I was a tourist. I said yes. They said, "Do you have tourist baggage?" I said yes. And then they searched the car. So it was absurd. Clearly, it's a boilerplate thing that they do. And anyway, after the statement, I took the time to tell the story exactly as I've been telling it here. And she translated it, and the stenographer took all the notes, about 3 pages of notes. And when we were done, they said, "Okay, we're going to take this now, and a committee will read it, and they will rule on your innocence or guilt. And then they will determine your fine." Then they all left the room, and I was left alone with the translator. And she said, "Sir, I am so embarrassed for this country. There is so much corruption." And she said, "Every day I translate for nice people like you who just come here. They want to be tourists. They just want to come and see." She said, "I apologize. I am so embarrassed. I almost can't sleep, at night because of how this is." She said, "But you will certainly be fined. What you own will be taken from you, and you'll probably be forced to leave the country." She said, "No matter what you told them, they're not going to read it. They don't care about it. This is all just part of the procedure to make it look like things are being done above board." So that was disappointing, and I said, "You're kidding." And then she went on to elaborate all the corruption here that's going on. I had no idea. I mean, I know governments are corrupt, but I had no idea that this is so institutionalized and that things are done this way. One thing that is very important to understand that was told to me by someone off the record in the customs office is that there are quotas for confiscated goods at the borders. So on certain days they are very aggressive because they're trying to meet their what's expected of them. And if they don't confiscate enough goods and get enough people into the system so that the money can be paid at the end and the goods can be resold, they actually face economic sanctions or their salary being sanctioned. So it kind of destroyed my hope and now I was just hoping for a verdict that at least I wouldn't have to pay all my money before I left the country to get out. She said, "No, they never return your things. They don't even bring them here. They don't even take them." She said, "In other countries, if they confiscate something that's legal that you didn't pay for, they give it back to you, after you pay the penalty. But here they keep it and they sell it on the black market." She said, "You'll certainly have to pay. I'm very sorry." And then she had to leave to go translate for other tourists and travelers and people, who needed her. So then after half an hour, I was called in to hear the verdict that I was already sure was guilty. And the translator was gone, so this lady came in and she just put down a piece of paper, all in the Macedonian Cyrillic script. I couldn't read it at all. I said, "I don't know what this says." She says, "Sign it." And I said, "I don't know what it says. I don't know." She said, "You sign." So then she brought in another man. And by the way, all these people look like just ordinary. They're not like evil, like movie-looking people. They look like moms and dads. They look like ordinary bureaucrats. They're just going through the motions here, that they do this every day. And this is how they make a living. This is how the system works, and they're a part of it. And they even apologize. They laugh about it. We're all on the same page, kind of. So the guy said, "Yes, you are admitting you are guilty, and you will pay 500 euros in order to leave the country and get your passport back." He said, "There is always an appeal process. You can appeal this." Well, I'd already been told by someone that the appeal process goes to the same people. It's just, and it takes more days, and you might get 100 euros off or something. You get a discount. You can argue all you want. You can be a loud American. You can do whatever you want. You're not going to win. This is how the system works. So you pay your money to get your passport, and you get out of there as fast as possible. When my verdict was handed down to me, and I was declared guilty, I asked the man who told me this news if anything that I had written had meant much to him about what actually happened. And he said, no. And I said, what in my testimony did you find most compelling? He said, I didn't read it. He said, I read only the statement from the customs office. So all the testimony that I went through and the truth-telling and all of that was just a formality. The actual board that was passing the judgment on me, I don't think bothered to read my statement. Didn't care. They just wanted to move the process forward, and that's all they do all day. So he couldn't comment in any way about what I'd said or anything. And when I told him, you know, these guards who had a game and they were being very abusive and everything, he seemed unsurprised. Like, yeah, I've heard all that before. He said, there's a complaint department for corruption. Call that department if you have some problem. So they had no interest in doing anything about the problem. They were part of it, and they just wanted to move the process along more quickly. To me, 500 euros didn't sound as bad. We knew that other people in our group were getting much higher fines. But fortunately, they were nice enough to me, because I joked with them a little bit. They were nice enough that they provided me a taxi to go down, and he watched as I withdrew from the ATM the money for the, I'm calling it a bribe. And I took the money back and I paid him. I couldn't wait to get out of there. And I paid him, and within a few minutes, my passport was delivered to me. I have it. I have my passport, and I am now leaving. Bye-bye. So I'm here now. I'm in Skopje, I'm in Skopje. I'm looking around at these buildings and construction projects and monuments. There are a lot of beautiful monuments to justice and equality and the law here. And what feels very strange to me is that just a few blocks away from here is literally where I and hundreds of other people were being totally taken advantage of for whatever money they could get out of us. And you know what this does is it makes you feel like you've been raped. I would never have come to this country if I had known that this is how people are treated when they arrive here. But I can't walk around on the streets here without feeling like the victim of a crime. And I know there's corruption all over the world, but to be a direct victim of it gives you a sense of how faceless and nameless people are in a bureaucratic system that exploits them strictly for its own benefit. So this monument behind me is a new construction by the government, and I don't know, I guess it's some kind of giant wasteful expenditure and represents to the people a lot of the corruption, some of which I experienced just a few days ago. So they've taken to defacing it, throwing color on it, graffiti on it, and this is kind of their statement of not tolerating the bureaucracy and corruption that I personally experienced while I was here. There are literally a million statues seemingly in this city. It's kind of weird. It's got that feeling of Soviet authority over you by the government. And there's just a million of them around. And you just get that feeling of they're spending a lot of money on things that kind of don't matter, except to send a message of authoritarianism. So I'm not exactly sure what exactly they're thinking. I just do know that I think that however they're treating me and other people here, however they treat tourists is not going to bring a lot of money in for their economy to thrive and for people to have the things they need. That's my story. I have all my paperwork. I'm going to be creating some warnings on YouTube. I'm going to create warnings on The Lonely Planet, Rick Steves, TripAdvisor sites, so that people won't fall into the same trap that I did and be forced to go through what I went through. Thanks for watching, and this is Rick Ray, and I'll be in a happier country soon, and I'll get back to you when I'm there. Thanks.